Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Couples Create Cash Flow. Today, we are continuing our topic of personal finance for couples. And today, we're going to start on stage one, where your cash flow is negative. And I'm calling this episode Financial Emergency. So let's dive in. We are going to look at this very first stage, cash flow being negative. So when we talk about cash flow, what we're saying is if you take your income and you subtract your expenses, that's your cash flow. In this situation where we say cash flow is negative, it's actually like a double negative where we have income is less than expenses. And so then we end up with a negative number. Cash flow is a negative number. So we are taking the cash flow number and we're trying to quickly, as fast as possible, turn it from a negative to a positive. So how does this happen? It happens when you have less money coming in each month than you're spending. And I'm calling this a financial emergency. We can't take any extra time to correct this. It's something we have to spend a lot of attention and focus on as fast as we possibly can. All right, so our top priority for this particular stage is to cut expenses and live with a strict budget so that you no longer lose money each month. A lot of times we hear the word budget and cut expenses, and we immediately feel something really negative on the inside, like, nope, not going to do that. But this is an emergency situation, and so we need to do something very quickly. The fastest way to make more room in your budget and in your finances is to cut an expense. Sometimes it takes some time to increase your income, but we're going to do that too. Stage one, though, is specifically about creating cash flow that is positive. And so we have to automatically assume that we're spending too much money and look at that. So, all right, so how are we going to do that? We're going to decrease our spending, and this is how we're going to do that decrease. We're going to confront actual spending amounts. We're going to be real about what we're actually spending money on. And then we're going to reset our priorities to focus on the essentials in our life. So we're looking at housing, transportation, food. And when I say food, I mean like, what can you eat that is cheap and healthy at home, not going out to eat for every meal. School, like if you're in college or in high school, if you have an education that you're is part of your life or your work, you obviously need to spend some money to maintain a job. Sometimes that's gas money, sometimes that's the clothing you wear or the tools you need. And then utilities, we all need to have running water and have the garbage be taken away and have some electricity. So those things are important. And if you work from home, you do need internet, right? So we're looking at if we can really pare down our expenses to really focus in on essentials, we should be able to create enough room so that our cash flow becomes positive. All right. So let's look at that first one, confronting the actual spending amounts. My assumption is if you find yourself in this category, you may not actually have a budget helper of some sort. So I like to use either mint.com or YNAB, which is You Need a Budget. Both of those I've found to be very helpful when it comes to tracking what you've spent your money on. You need to find a way to categorize your transactions. So basically, if you have a bank statement and it says that you had a transaction to Amazon.com for $150, you need to put that in a specific category, right? Because that could have been almost anything. Amazon can sell almost anything. And so we need to be particular about where we put things. And if you can go through and you categorize certain purchases, it gives you a really good feedback then on that app or that website about how much you're spending each month in each category. And that's really what we're going for. We're going for what are the actual numbers that have left your bank account and your credit card? What are the actual transactions that took place within a month where your money left you and went out and either bought something or paid for an experience? We need to know where that went. Okay. So the other thing we have to do is we have to be careful about how we think about our money. One of the things that a lot of people do, I've done this myself, is that we buy something that we like or want or feel like it will make our life better or make us happier. And sometimes they're just luxury items, I'm not into purses, obviously. But if I was a lady that liked purses, I might see that I need another purse because I saw an ad on Facebook or Instagram or Amazon. And in that moment, it would be very easy then to say, well, I could use some of those. Um, or if you just have a particular hobby or something that you enjoy doing, you might need some kind of gear or tools or some kind of equipment that helps you do that hobby. And maybe it's very easy to say, well, yeah, I this brings me joy and this is something that I want to spend money on. What I have right now isn't working for me, or I could always use another one of those. We need to stop justifying those non-essential purchases because what we're in is a financial emergency. This is not the time to just kind of say, oh, I'm going to spend money on things that bring me joy. This is actually a time to say, how do I make sure that I am not spending money that I don't have? Okay. Another piece would be look out for those small purchases. They can add up pretty quickly. It can be very tempting to buy something that's $3 or $4 every day of the week. But if you think about that, $3 every day for a whole month, you're looking at getting pretty close to $100. So I think it's important to not justify the small purchases by saying, "Oh, that's not very much money," um, because what ends up happening is we start saying, "Well, that's not that much," and maybe that's anything under $5. But then maybe as you go, you're like, well, if it's under $20, it's not that big of a deal. And really, each time money leaves your system, if it's not going towards something that you absolutely need in this stage, you need to make sure that you evaluate that and be aware of those things. Um, if you're able to kind of cut those small purchases out, it can actually have a big impact on your finances. The next one is beware of monthly subscriptions. It is so easy to sign up for things that are $7.99 or $9.99 or even $14.99 a month because for one-time purchase, it's not very much money, right? I mean, you could say, well, yeah, look at all the value I get off of this streaming software or this magazine or whatever it ends up being. And maybe, yeah, maybe that's true. But I think that a lot of times we have subscriptions that start adding up and we don't even realize what we are doing to our budget. We don't see the cumulative impact that those small things have. It's a lot like the small purchases thing. When you have a mental framework where you say it's only this little amount, you don't really see how it adds up because, let's say you had a $10 a month subscription. Well, that's $120 a year. If somebody said, "Hey, will you pay me $120 up front for this?" You may have said no. Um, but you may have said yes to $10 a month for a whole year, forgot to turn it off and end up spending more than 120. So sometimes it is important to cut out some of those subscriptions. I'm not saying you need to cut everything, but I am saying in this stage, um, you may need every $10 you can find. Um, and then look out for bank fees that could be removed or reversed. If you have a checking account that has hit overdraft a couple times, you may have fees associated with your checking account that are 50, 60, $80. It's important to communicate with your bank about these things. It's possible that they can remove those, especially if you transferred money into the account the same day, or the day after, or if you had money in savings and your checking went negative for a day, like maybe they can just say, "Oh yeah, that's right, you had that money in savings, so we don't need to charge you this." My experience is that most of the time when there's a fee associated with my account, if I communicate with my bank about it, they're usually willing to help me out. Obviously, you don't want to make a pattern or habit of these fees popping up. Um, and a lot of times they come up because they're unexpected expenses. And what we're trying to do right now is trying to make sure that we are anticipating expenses. We want to know where they're going to come from. All right. Here's the next thing. We need to be real about what we're spending money on. We need to actually calculate how much money we spend in 1 month on interest payments to credit cards and loans. This could be student loans, car loans, personal loans, home equity loans. We want to know if we're trying to bring this cash flow number to a positive place, we want to know what types of expenses are sucking extra money away from us. And interest payments are a big one for kind of that um, maybe that hidden cost that is part of financing something. So maybe you buy something on a credit card one month, and then you don't realize that you didn't actually make a full payment on your credit card, and now you're being charged interest at 20 or 30% for the next month, right? So those numbers add up very fast, especially the credit card debt. And so we really want to be wise about what we finance and try to get those interest payments under control. The other thing would be to look at specific budget categories. So especially with something like mint.com, you can sometimes have these catch-all categories like home. Home I've found on Mint can mean home improvement, home renovation. It could be your mortgage payment. So there's a lot of things that kind of bundle under that, but it's not very helpful unless you make it more specific. Or also shopping. So like let's say you do a lot of purchases online with Amazon. Every time you go through an Amazon purchase, it's going to guess that it should be this shopping category. And sure, maybe that is okay. But there are going to be some essential things you have to buy, like toilet paper and cleaning supplies and things like that, that should maybe be in a separate category than buying the latest clothing item that you wanted, or buying shoes, or I don't know, some kind of entertainment thing that, or, just gear or equipment or whatever it is. There's all different things that can fall under that big generic topic. And what I would say is we need to find a way to be more specific so that we can really analyze and look into each category and really be honest about, yeah, I spent this much money on extra clothes this month, right? All right. And then the next thing would be to look at priorities. When we're in this financial emergency zone for stage one, we need to prioritize the essentials. If it is not essential, then we can cut it and we can still live our daily life. Now, we may be sacrificing something that is fun. We might be sacrificing something that's convenient. We may be sacrificing something that brings us joy. But at the end of the day, it does relieve some of the stress that comes with not having enough money in your bank account, and burning a lot of money in credit card interest payments. That's the other thing. Because a lot of times folks that stay in the stage one for a while, they have unpaid credit card debt that is eating them alive. It will take years and years and years to pay off that credit card debt if you only pay the minimum payment. So what we're looking at is, how do we make sure we're making every single purchase with this thought of, it has to fit into what I'm making this month, not can I float that expense on a credit card and keep moving my balance to a new 0% for 90 days type of scheme. So we really want to find out, what are those housing, transportation, food, work, utilities, that sort of, those categories. What are we paying for that? I mean, obviously, like a doctor's bill or things like that are essential as well. And then look at what the difference is between those essential things and what the non-essentials add up to be. And so that could be things like entertainment, extra clothing, gaming, gambling, dining out, a lot of other things. But really, it's things that if you were to not purchase those, you could still live a pretty good life. And this is temporary, right? When you have enough money to live that luxurious lifestyle, boom, put those expenses back into your budget. But for right now, we really need to get down to the essentials in order to get that cash flow to be positive. So the ultimate goal of stage one is to get to stage two as fast as possible. We really don't want to wait until next month or sometime in the future to take some kind of action. We need to get the cash flow to be positive immediately. Some people talk about this like we're plugging our financial leaks, or we are stopping the bleeding. Whatever metaphor you need to think about in order to really start to sense this urgency that needs to happen. We really need to create this positive cash flow immediately. And so here's some things we can do as an action step. We can start a budget. Now, the point of this budget is to look back at your spending to learn where your money's going. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know where your money's been or where it's going in the future, you will not have the ability to make the right decisions to get things back on track. Also, identify the things that are not essential. Find out how much you're spending in these categories. Um, it may be hard to cut it all together, but there might be certain ways that you could cut a specific category altogether, and it would make a big impact on your budget. Then look at all the expenses that you have that have some kind of interest payment associated with them. Add up all the interest that you've paid out each month. Put that as a separate, um, take a piece of paper out, like write out each thing that had interest and how much interest you paid. It might take a little bit of digging. For example, if you have a car payment, you have a dollar amount that came out of your bank account, but you may not know exactly how much was interest and how much was principal. You might need to look at your statement to actually see how much of that payment went towards interest. And then add that up, because let's say you have a budget where you're blowing the budget by $150 each month, but you have interest payments that are $500 or $600. I mean, that would be a very good indication that some interest needs to be taken care of. So we'll talk more about dealing with it, like these payments on interest, in the next couple stages. But for right now, we need to make a list of exactly what is taking our money away from us. So that's stage one. We're really looking at getting that cash flow to be as positive as possible, as fast as possible. And that brings us to stage two. So stay tuned for the next video and keep on doing your best to control that spending. All right. See you later.